everybody. In the meantime, this is the last session of actually a 4-day of webinars and conferences of the project Consortium for Children and Youth Empowerment and Participation. It all started on Monday with English-speaking Africa, and then on Tuesday there was a long webinar in French-speaking Africa. Yesterday there was like a 7-hour fantastic webinar from the American region in Spanish with participants from Spain as well. Today we are closing with a short but I guess very interesting and inspiring panel from the European region with 3 speakers, 2 of them coming from 2 of the 3 networks who are partners in our project. The networks are namely Dynamo International, Street Workers Network, and DCI, Defense for Children International. But I can introduce myself. I'm Francesco Ferrando, and I was a street social worker here in Brussels for 8 years, and now I'm working for the technical team here in Brussels of the network of Dynamo International. Share the screen. I guess everybody is able now to see the presentation, which is basically setting the scene for what are we talking about today. And as I said, the first 3 days were like marathons. Now we're rather having a sprint, but I guess we will shine a light on this big topic, which is, as you can see, youth participation in the European Union, a regional challenge. So I have a first question for all of you, and it is, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about participation? Don't overthink, it's the first thing that comes to your mind. So everybody can post their answer to the chat. While I'm waiting to the other answers, I mean, why I'm asking this question, because I think that it could mean it's a very complex concept, of course. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking like a kitchen recipe, and I came up with 3 ingredients, which are space. You need a space to participate in, trust, and ultimately belonging, the feeling that you belong to a group or a society or a community, and ultimately a purpose and eventually the capacity to have an impact. So we already seeing that it doesn't come automatically. Participation, you need some ingredients, and there are lots more. For example, time, and for example, resources, and for example, information. It's a complex concept, and it is a multidimensional concept, both in its depth. For example, if we talk about political participation, and I think we're going to talk fairly a lot about political participation today in this webinar, we could talk about voting or participating actively in a political movement or a political party. It could mean to inform, to take information, to give information about political context. It could mean taking the street to protest or manifest. Welcome to the new participants. They are coming. We're still in the very first phases of the webinar. I'm the moderator, Francesco, and I'm welcoming you. And I was highlighting some basic concepts about participation, which is multidimensional, both in its depth but also in its extension. There's, of course, political participation, but participation could mean, could cover all of the areas of the collective and social life, the labor market, the education system, the justice system, other areas you could think about. So I am repeating once again a simple question for all of you, both participants and speakers, which is, what is the first thing that comes up to your mind when you think about participation? And you can post your answer to in the chat. So participation is a right, of course, but also an engagement. But staying on the first part of the sentence, we just wanted to highlight it, that it is a right that is written and protected in both in the Convention of the Rights of the Child and, of course, also in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And starting from these two sources, you'll find that the right of participation, you can find it under multiple forms in basically most or maybe every piece of law of democratic countries, at least, or so-called democratic countries. Just to give you some elements of the EU framework without going deep. Since a couple of years, European Union developed a strategy which came up with 11 goals, which were developed by a group of young people. And as you can see, they cover a lot of different areas, and there's a dedicated goal, which is called Space and Participation for All. But of course, in my understanding, they're all connected with participation, all of the 11. So the strategy came up in 2018 and 19. And if you see the short description, it really focuses on the participation in democratic life, social and civic engagement, and aims to ensure that all of young people have the necessary resources to take part in the society. And then you have the three key words, who are very beloved by the European Commission: engage, connect, and empower. So I feel that we have the words, we have the discourse, but how do we go from the public discourse to the reality on the field? And to help me in this journey, I have three wonderful speakers, and I'm very thrilled to have you on this panel, because I think we could come up with some interesting presentation, but also discussion. So the rule of engagement are the following. I'm asking a specific question to the three speakers after presenting them. They'll have 8 minutes each to give their presentation or answer, and then a second round, and then we'll open the discussion with the priority to the questions from the chat, and then the comments, questions, reaction from the speakers. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker, which is Iris Papa. Iris works at Defense for Children International Greece as the coordinator of Children's Rights Help Desk, which offers child protection services, social legal counseling, and representation to children on the move and in urgent need. She had previous experiences in the third sector in the field of human rights and international development. She holds an LLM in international law with a focus on human rights, and she was acknowledged by the School of Law of Glasgow University as one of the top 100 female graduates of the last 100 years. Congratulations, Iris, and welcome to our panel. So my first question for you, as a member of DCI Greece, working with a specific target public, with a legal perspective, but also a social legal, let's say, perspective, what are the main challenges linked to the participation of this particular target population? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Francesco, and all of you who are here today. I'm very happy that I participate in this panel discussion. Thank you also for the introduction. So, as you said, my role here at the DCI Greece is I'm the coordinator of the Children's Rights Help Desk, which basically was designed and developed based on the needs and risks children on the move face upon their arrival into the Greek territory, with the aim to fill in the critical gaps. So we see that, so we work actually a lot with unaccompanied minors, but also accompanied ones, youth transitioning to adulthood, but also young adults. we see that in the context of the asylum procedures, I would say that there are still many challenges and obstacles that hinder children's effective participation. We still, and actually what I would like to point out is that when we speak, you made a very nice introduction to the right of participation. But when we speak about the right to participation, it is important to have in our minds that it doesn't mean only that we give the floor to the children and young people and we ask them specific questions so as to receive specific replies. But it's actually the obligation that we have to take into consideration what the children, youth are saying to us, and to make sure that we will think and we will take into consideration their answers, because we see sometimes that we try to include in our work as professionals their voice, but it's not only this, and we need to be aware of that. So we really need to make sure that we have the specific framework and we provide them with the necessary suitable child-friendly environment so as them to feel safe, first of all, to raise their voice. And here, and I will speak about Greece because Greece is the country that we are operating as DCI Greece, is that we still have, for instance, many legal and procedural barriers that can include, for example, language barriers, lack of information. Still, children are not received proper child-friendly information about their rights and about the options that they have. So how we can ask them what do they want and what do they need and what they think is better for them if we in the first place, we don't provide them with the crucial information and about their rights and about what are the options available to them. Also, the system that is in place does not take into consideration their specific, maybe, vulnerabilities, their specific needs. We need to have into our mind that children on the move, especially those that are seeking asylum, may have experienced traumatic events, such as violence, conflict. They probably are separated from their family members. And this experience not only affects, of course, their well-being and mental health, but also hinders their ability to engage in the decisions that are affecting them. So it is also important to provide the support, including psychological support, social services, to address these specific needs. We work a lot with the authorities, social workers, lawyers, and still we see that the people that are working in the asylum procedures many times are not also trained in order about children's rights, about trauma-informed approach, in order to see and to be educated how they can include children's voice in their decision-making. And I would like also to give another example. We see that, for instance, in the asylum procedures and the asylum decision, and I speak now particularly on accompanied minors that are here with their family members, that in the analytical legal framework that is employed when on their asylum application, there is a significant gap in considering the child's individual circumstances, best interest, and their voice. So we see decisions that they have not taken into consideration their voice, their best interest, because unfortunately, and many times, accompanied minors are perceived as, the mere extensions, I would say, of their guardians rather than independent right holders. I still remember, because we're working a lot together with the children that have family reunification applications, children that they want to be reunited with their family members that are living abroad. And while preparing, for instance, the whole case file, there is a specific document that must be filled in, the best interest assessment. The best interest assessment has in its heart the best interest of the child, of course, a child's own voice. And I remember some years ago, Mahmoud and Samira, two siblings, that they wanted to be reunited with their mother in another European country. When they received the rejection because of some procedural issues, to tell me, why you asked me all these questions in order to fill in this document, so as to tell you exactly what I want, and we want to be with our mother, when you don't care, or the other country don't care about our opinion. Why you rejected my case the moment I told you that I want to be with my mother and I need to be with my mother? So we say that children's right to participation is highly neglected, and we need, as professionals working in this field, to try to provide a safe platform for these children and youth to express themselves, to create their key messages. And as I said before, when I started, not only to ask them, but to really try to involve them and to include their opinion on our work and on the decision making.
Thank you very much, Iris, for this first part of your presentation. And just a couple of highlights. As you said, participation, it's not just to ask and to consult. This is a very basic form. And when I was talking about the depth of participation, it's precisely that. I mean, to shine a light that it's like for political participation, we can vote once in 5 years, and that's all. And we could consider it effective participation, but especially if you're working with child, and especially if we're working with accompanied or unaccompanied minors, we have to take a lot of care about what's our understanding, and then how do we put in practice this right? Because it is a right, but it is an engagement, but not an engagement, not so an engagement for the children itself or for the youth itself, but for the whole society in its whole, to provide this famous space for the people, for all people to be able to participate in. So thank you again. I will come back soon to your perspective and experience, but moving to our second speaker. She's Neška Agnes Vodeb from the Bob Institute in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and she's a member of our network, the Dinamo International Street Workers Network, which is, I repeat it, with Defense for Children International and Tejiendo Redes, which is Latin American and Caribbean, and in the Caribbean also, network working precisely on empowerment and participation of children and young people. So Neška is a social pedagogue and youth worker at the Bob Institute in Ljubljana. She wrote a thesis entitled The Basics of Working with Young People in Public Spaces, and her thesis was awarded with the prize of the Slovenian Youth Council. And she has been working for many years on development of the practice of street work, both as a practitioner, but also as a trainer and as a researcher. So I'm so happy to have you, Neška. And I will start with a question about your own experience on the field in Ljubljana. How can you describe the tension or the relationship between participation in youth work and service providing? So can you give us some example, please, from your practice? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco, for inviting me. I'm as well happy to be here and looking forward for the discussion that will follow. Initially, I want to kind of react and go on from where you started, Iris, since this is maybe not with the same target group, not maybe in the same environment, but kind of the issue that we are facing as well. So I think that can be a really interesting part for our discussion later on, how we are able to ask children of, in our case, young people, but when it comes to actually enabling them to really participate, not just expressing their opinion, we as a society, I think, are not ready for that and are not giving them this opportunity. So I look forward for that part, but maybe just for the starters. Yeah, Francesco, as you were saying, I work in Institute Bob. We are located in Ljubljana, in the capital of Slovenia. It's a small country bordering to Italy, Croatia, Austria, and Hungary, 2 million population, so very small country. This is, I think, an important context. Yeah, as an organization, Zavod Bob works in the field of youth work and non-formal education. We run 2 youth center and we do street work. I wanted to start from here because I believe, and I think it's also kind of written multiple times, that participation is a key part of youth work. So I believe that youth work is not just any form of working with young people outside the formal institution such as school, but it's a specific approach with its own principles, where enabling participation is one of the main objectives and as well principles. So like when we are working in the youth sector, doing youth work, we are thinking of enabling participation of young people within the process itself. So it's not working for them, but it's really working with them. And another part is enabling or going to the direction where they could participate in the society at large. So with the experience from the youth work, where they have maybe experience how to participate in a smaller group, do a smaller project, a community project, whatever like their work is, they kind of train and get the experience how it is the process of the participation going, and then they can transfer, let's say, this knowledge or skills to like that they are able to participate in the society at large. And yeah, I believe that this is written on the papers. I think we have many good practices when it comes to enabling participation in youth work, whereas I think still sometimes we are stuck with being service providers rather than really enabling participation. So I believe that youth work isn't or shouldn't stop at providing service. Of course, part of our job is providing a service, but the goal or the heart of our job should be enabling and supporting young people participation. And this is why as well I wrote in the chat that this is the fun part of my job, you know. I prefer to sit down with a group of young people, starting the discussion, okay, where do we go from now and what are we going to do with this time, with these resources, then, you know, organizing something as a workshop for them, and where they just come and after an hour and a half, they leave, possibly being in a good mood, possibly having some impact on them, but still they were not involved as much as maybe they could be. So yeah, I think it is first easier to provide services than to support through participation, because I think for let's say for me as a youth worker, or if we transfer this to the society, you know, on one case, if we are providing the service, we know how it's going to look like. We have the control. And when we are just there to support the participation, actually, a lot of things are unexpected. And this is scary. This is unsure. And definitely one thing is sure, that there could be something that will change. And I think change is usually scary. I think people, it is in our DNA that we like to be in our comfort zone, and comfort zone is something that we know, and learning and changing is always something unsecure. And when there is something to change, it's a bit unknown. And yeah, it is easier just to stay in our comfort zone. So I don't think only society is not allowing young people to participate. I think as well, like different professionalists that have the power, that they could really support meaningful participation, sometimes maybe don't know how, or are afraid to really, go into the process of supporting the meaningful participation. When it comes to really the practice and trying to be as concrete as I can be, for example, now it's 4 years, I think, I've been as well working in a youth center. And one of the things that we like to do is providing a safe space for young people so they can participate and be themselves and develop different things. And that would mean as well that they could use the place autonomously if, we know them, the trust is built and so on. And this is rarely the case. Most of them are super surprised that there is a place in Ljubljana, in the capital, that they can use free of charge, and that we as a youth workers trust that they will use it in a good way, that we don't think that they will ruin or steal something, but that we believe in them, that they will do something good for their community, for the society. And we have many youth centers, and we are one of the rare ones that, they don't have to sign, I don't know what kind of a contract to use the space, and, that we really support their participation with really concrete action as well, because if you're a group of young people wanting to do something and you don't have the resources, you don't have maybe really good economical pedigree, it's really hard in Ljubljana to rent a space to practice or for an office or whatever. So yeah, we try to do support the participation of young people in different ways. This is just one of the examples. I think we will later on talk about as well, like more this supporting the political participation. But yeah, kind of the same as Iris, you were highlighting the question, whether we as a professionalist and a society at large are ready not only to declare that the participation is a right, but are we really ready to put it into the practice? And what would that mean? Because some young people are definitely critical towards the system as it is now and would like to change it, and giving them real possibility, meaningful participation might mean that some things might change. And yeah, I will maybe stop here for now. Yeah, and pass on the mic.
Thank you, Neshka. You're both very disciplined with your time. So thank you. It's easier for me like this. And yes, just to highlight, maybe we are not ready indeed, even amongst us, let's say youth workers or social workers or street workers or human rights defenders. And I think one of the yesterday's panel was about, it's not an English word, but I think in English it's like the adult-centric society. So and to grant participation, to leave the floor and to give the floor for all the people, including young people and children, to participation, it also means to wait for the unexpected and to be surprised to some extent. So of course we're going to go deeper in your practices and challenges as well, Neshka. But Now I'm going to present our third speaker. It's a pleasure for me to present Nick Arnaud Giri-Julia. They are a political refugee from the Great Lakes region in Central Eastern Africa, if I'm not wrong. He's currently living in Brussels, Belgium. He's a social worker and queer activist dealing with migration issues with a focus on housing and the well-being of LGBTQIA+ migrants in Belgium, and also an artist in their spare time. Welcome, Nick. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So, I forgot your question. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us from your own experience as a young people and also as a refugee and also as an activist, what can you tell us about the issue of youth participation, particularly in Brussels and particularly in some of the neighborhoods where you lived or live, and when you do your activities? Thank you.
Thank you again. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. And I'm also thrilled to be on this panel. And thank you also for all people who came before me. And yeah, I learned a lot. So if you have to talk about the issue that we face, I and other people who may be migrants, like migration background here in Belgium and Brussels, it's quite complex. It's quite complex because for the people who know Belgium, Belgium is a country which is really, how can I say it? It's a small country, but quite complex. We have different governments in place. We have like 3 national languages, which is French, Dutch, and German. And so here in Brussels, we actually have our own government, like our regional government with ministers, and we also have our own parliament. So it means that, like, every region has its own parliament, its own government, its own thing. So it means you can understand, you can imagine how it can be, you know, chaotic for people who are like me, who just come in Belgium. I've been like here 5 years in Belgium, and maybe I will become a Belgian in a few months. You know, I'm cross my fingers. And it can be so challenging for the youth to actually know, like, what can I do, like where to go. And because I live in Saint-Just, and it's how can I call it? It's the poorest like municipality in Brussels, and where also we have so many young people like who live in here, and especially young people from migration background. We even call it, like, the municipality, we call it like a transit municipalities, which means like people who just come in Belgium to just live here and go to other municipalities when they have to get their papers or they become rich, or I know. So, and yeah, we have so many issues because people, like especially young people like me, don't feel represented in politics, or even like we can say like in so many factors. We can talk about social factor, or we could talk economical, factor, or yeah, in political factor, because people, they feel like, okay, so people like us, we are not legitimate to participate in politics, to participate in our local community. I always play with people, like joke with people, like we live in the poorest municipality, but 5 minutes from where we live, we have the European Commission. European Commission, why, like, those, how you can feel how they are presented as, these rich white guys, being like in the commissions, going around living in the best, expensive neighborhoods, but 5 minutes from there, it's the poorest neighborhood, where we have young people who are being arrested by the police, young people who can't go to schools, we have like an epidemic of drug use in the municipality. And this is just 5 minutes away from the European Commission, where we have all these buildings, where we have all these European, white, rich people live. And so when I'm talking with young people around here, when I'm doing the community work, they always tell us, like, yeah, Nick, look at those people who are, like 5 minutes away, like, just look at how they look. do they look like me? Like the people who decide at the parliament, the people who decide at the European Commission, they don't look like us. You know, they have their privileges. You know, whatever we can do, we will never be good enough. We also have problems in politics. The rise of the extreme right wing, like I think like other countries, you know, around Europe, where we have like, you know, politicians and also the media participating in this. For me, I call it just misinformation, where they are, when you talk about the youth living in these kind of municipalities, they're always, you know, portrayed in a negative way. You know, the youth that doesn't go to school, the youth that, you know, is using drugs, you know, don't respect the authority, or, you know, if you are to talk about the prisons, so who are the people who are mostly represented in the prisons? You know, there are the same people like Black, Arab, you know, background. So this can be really, like, I get it when I'm talking with people around me, how it's it can demotivate, it can hinder their thirst to participate, to be there, you know, to be there and try to you know, to say like, we represent, we are here, we are also Belgians, because we have so many, you know, so many times they also, you know, when you are to ask them like, who are you, like, where are you from, maybe they tend to say like, no, for me, I'm from, you know, I'm from Morocco. But the person, you know, was born here in Belgium, sometimes never even been in Morocco. But because they always, you know, they keep on telling them, the politicians, the media, keep on telling them that you don't belong here in Belgium, you're from Morocco, you're from Turkey, you're from Africa, you know, Belgian people, they don't look like you. Belgian people, they are they don't live in your neighborhoods, because we also have a problem here in Brussels, where it's so segregated, where we have like a municipality full of Turkish people, a municipality for Moroccans people, yet you are all Belgians, yet you are all to participate, to be there, to be represented. Yeah, but it's quite, you know, it's quite complex. But there are so many things being done, you know, for me, where I'm doing my social work, like community work, where we, you know, we tell people that, okay, so yeah, the politicians are saying this and this, the medias are saying this and this, but you know what, we have something to say, we have something to do. In Belgium, 70% of people who live in Brussels are from the migration background. So which means that we have voices, we have a lot to say, to participate in, so that we can be heard. But it's a slow work, you know, and it requires a lot of, you know, economic, like financial, you know, help, support, but things that are being done, you know, using maybe, you know, via art, via community work. And yeah, so I think we face so many issues, and that we do our best to actually, you know, work upon it, and, you know, try to see maybe in 2024 we have a change in terms of voting. We vote in 2024 in Belgium. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And before passing to the second round, I wanted to highlight this issue. It would be in the form of a question. So we were reading in the EU framework about participation for all and participation as a right. But this question about participation for whom, who are entitled, who are legitimate to participate in reality. And we're starting to see that behind the words, behind the public discourse, of course, the reality is way different, even in a region like the Europe or European Union, which is perceived, and it is economically one of the richest regions in the world, but still participation, I feel, is more a privilege than a right. And it shouldn't, of course, and it shouldn't even be a right that people can access after they have basic rights, because there are no basic rights. I mean, rights are all on the same level. So the challenge for us is, yes, to give, I mean, not only for us, but for the society as a whole, to give this famous base and legitimacy and trust and a purpose and possibility to make an impact. So long way to go, but I'll have later a second question for you, Nick. But first, I'm going back to Iris with the second question about the practices and also the methods and the methodologies you use with young people on the move in Greece in order to support them, let's say, in this journey towards participation. And also, if you manage in your 8 minutes, but you can go 10 minutes, of course, to touch upon the child-friendly Justice European Network, which you're part of, and it will be fantastic. Thank you, Iris.
Great, thanks. So actually, as I said before, we strongly believe as DCI Greece, but also as a DCI movement, that of course children are advocates for their rights, and they're not only rights holders, need of protection and safety, but also active members, as we said, of a society that is capable of voicing their own rights. So we try child participation to be, of course, and it is a key principle that guides our work, and we have tried to do so with the establishment of the cluster of young ambassadors within the organization. That has been actually a milestone in our trajectory, and actually it was not formed as a response to a specific, project, but it came very naturally to complement our structures and the advocacy work that we are doing. So since 2019, we have this cluster of young people, children and young people, refugee teenagers and youth that have undertaken these past years a variety of raising awareness activities and advocacy activities. And some of them were concerted advocacy work at the domestic level here with the national authorities, while others at the UN, regional, European, international level. And and our experience has shown that how this is so empowering for the children themselves. I remember still one of our young ambassadors, Rahmat, we know him now for many years. He last year participated at the UN side event on institutional violence against children on the move in Geneva. And I remember how, for him, what an empowerment moment was for him that he had the opportunity to speak before the UN representatives and other international actors and ask them specific questions. Why, I remember still his question, why children must suffer? Why there is no yet in Greece a guardian system? For him to be able to raise his voice, to share his experiences and his challenges in front of policymakers was a really empowering moment for him, that as he told us actually afterwards, that it was, a groundbreaking experience. And we need, and what we also try to do is the children that we are working with, and we know for many years now that to let them lead, to let them plan their own activities, not to just, to ask them, you can do this, let's do this, but also to make them decide what they would like to bring on the table, how they would like to share their experiences, and to run, for instance, their own led events. We have organized in the past an event where we said, you will organize it, you will choose your topic, your title, the topic of discussion. It was as a panel discussion, and it was a very nice moment for them, and they decided even their own title, that we want to speak not as refugees, and the title that they chose back then is that we are more than a refugee, and they didn't want at all, for instance, to speak about their struggles and their challenges, but they wanted to speak about what are the dreams. And And this is also very important. And to go now, you asked about the child-friendly justice network, and I would like also to speak about it, is that we are members of these European networks that one of the objectives, of course, is to empower children to have the rights respected in all the judicial proceedings, to gather their voices in a participatory manner and make them heard. So the aim is to create and to develop an advisory group, let's say, on its member. The idea now behind what we want and we will develop now in the next month is that this group of young ambassadors that we are already working in, but we will open it up and more children and young people will be invited to participate if they wish, of course, to, is that to be informed, of course, about their rights and how to claim them, and to be trained on the participatory method of the theater of the oppressed, with a special focus on the techniques of forum theater, for instance, rainbow theater, legislative theater. So through this participatory method, there will be given the ideal space, to actively interact on the matters of concern to them, to form ideas, to rehearse reality, to create advocacy material. They will be able to create specific theatrical plays in front of the authorities. They could switch role with the authorities, and we see that this is something that they're also like that. They're interested in that. And in the past, they had the opportunity to switch role with the authorities. And I think for both of them and for the children, but also with the authorities, was very, eye-opening for some minutes to take the role of the other person and to have this kind of engagement. And on our daily work, we also, all this material that we produce, the legal reports, advocacy reports, we try always to take into consideration their opinion and to use their voice, using quotes of what they believe, what they would like to change. This is a little bit the techniques that we are now working on. And if we have later on through the discussion, we can share and exchange more examples.
I'm sure we will. Thank you, Iris. And of course, not surprised that forms of expression such as theater and particular forms of theater, like the theater of oppression, are used all across different parts of the world towards this goal of achieving participation, active and meaningful participation. So back to Neshka. My second question for you will be in particular about political participation, like in a broad sense, not just voting. And what's your perspective on the issue of political participation for youth, for young people, knowing that on one hand, there's a big push from the European institution to young people to be participating, basically to vote. That's the main participation form in the at least in the intentions, in my understanding of the European Union, which is quite afraid about the disconnection, let's say, from the youth with the institution, and not only the youth, but yes, political participation is a lot more than voting, and young people are often at the forefront, of social movements and political participation, let's say, less conventional, but maybe more effective sometimes. But we'll see that the reaction are not so positive from the institution when it comes to other forms of participation. So I'll leave the floor to you with this thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I continue from where I ended before, saying in a way that like participation is one of the principles, but as well as objective of youth work. I would say when it comes to our work in our organization, participation was always a very important topic. Though in the last 3, now I think turning 4 years, we've become even more active in the field of political participation. So in the time when COVID came, the government in Slovenia changed to, let's say, way more right populist parties. So of course, COVID was a good excuse for a lot of oppression. So on the one hand, we have COVID, on the other hand, we have very populistic right-wing party. And then we had groups of young people supporting them that, you know, were not satisfied with the society, how the society has reacted and so on. So concretely, we've been supporting 2 youth activist movements in less, I think 3 years, more or less. So we could see, you know, the attitude of the, let's say, the ones that are in the position of the power towards the political participation, that it's not conventional. So, of course, everybody is saying, again, in media, on papers, go and vote. Young people, please go and vote. But when it comes to any other form of political participation, that it's not conventional, that it's building up a petition or going out on the street to protest and to say what you think, it's your right, and how it is not, you know, taking into consideration and how you see the society and how the society should change, then immediately you are not anymore a good citizen, and you are not treated as one. This is, now I will just like really to be really concrete, given an example. It was not a group that we directly work with, but I think it really shows a picture. So when it was COVID, many Slovenia, I mean, the schools were closed. So in a way, primary, high school faculty, nobody could go into the physical premises. Everything was being on Zoom. And in one of the cities, one group of young people, high school students, so being aged 14 to 18, decided that they will go out on the street and with the signature, we want school to be open, we want to go back into the school, you know. So this is first time in history when you have young people actually saying we want to go to the school. Usually it's the opposite, at least in Slovenia. They were wearing masks, keeping the distance. I mean, having all this safety precaution, being in a public space. They got fined, they got persecuted in the court because they were not allowed to say their opinion on the topic. Yeah, we persecuted young people for saying we want to go to school, which is absurd. And Francesco, before you were saying that there has to be 3 components for the participation: trust, outcome, and I don't know what was the third one, but this is like, this was all over the media. How can, I mean, this was like a very clear message from the ones that are into the position of power, you know, to young people, what they really think about their participation. You know, it's not important. It is important when you are a number that you go and vote, but when it's really up to you to express what you think your needs, then they are, you know, punished for doing that. Luckily, I mean, the court didn't punish them, so you know, but still the whole process brought a very clear message to the generation of young people. And this was not a single case as well. You know, other young protesters were treated like criminals, just going outside with the banner to the street expressing their thought about certain issue. So yeah, you ask me what I think, what is the reality? I think the reality is, when we think about the participation, or to be exact, political participation, we think about voting, about conventional political participation. We rarely think about, you know, we want to support manifestations, activists, movements, collectives, where the real change is actually happening. Because, I mean, again, this is going to my first point, you know, when we go to elections, there is a very limited list from what we can choose from. And somebody was already addressing, you know, who has the possibility to participate, who is on the position of the power these days. Am I represented in the parliament? You know, can I select somebody who I kind of identify with? I mean, not really, to be honest. So like the real change comes from, I believe, as well, non-conventional political participation, which is, at least in our reality, not accepted as much. So yeah, maybe I stop here, and that we still have some time for the questions and answers.
Quite frightening when young people are condemned for claiming their basic rights just to have an education, for example. Back to Nick. Again, I would like to ask you about your your personal and professional experience, because you talked about several barriers and obstacles, but how did you manage to overcome these kind of obstacles to really get engaged and be an active citizens and make an impact, hopefully, in society?
Yeah, so I'm trying to overcome. I'm trying to overcome, and also like the people that I work with, like in the local community. So I think what really pushed us and is pushing us is we're starting to understand that we have to own our own narrative. You know, because we're seeing how the youth is being portrayed in the media. As I say, the youth is being portrayed by the politicians, and especially the youth in these poorest communities. You know, how I won't come again on how they portray us in the media. And we just come together and we're like, okay, you know what? If we don't do it, no one is going to do it. and especially these politicians in the extreme right wing, it's on their interest to just portray us negatively, and they are going to vote them. And now we in Belgium, like the second largest party in Belgium is Vlaams Belang, which is the extreme right, wing party. And so we're like, okay, so either we let them to portray us, or we create our own narratives. And that's what you have been doing. That's what we have been doing via so many local initiatives. There's so many beautiful initiatives that I've been, navigating in here in Saint-Josse, in Brussels. So, I heard about this youth ambassador, where we have these young people from the migration background come together and organize the debate there are so many young people that come in and they're like, okay, so what do we know about politics? What's going on in politics now? And so then they have to debate to do this kind of competition. And it's really nice and beautiful to see these people. We normally don't see them in the media. We normally don't see them at the political level, but we see them during this competition and see how they are so, so interested about what's going on the local community, in the local community, about this financial bill that is being presented in the parliament, about the social issues around Belgium. And this is really nice to see how they're like, okay, so now we can actually talk about this, our voice can be heard. And also see, we started seeing so many initiatives, like, how do we call it? Mass participation, if I may say it, where we see like youth are being, like young people are being invited to come together, and they're like, okay, so this is what's going on. And in 2024, we have this kind of parties around, and these are their programs. How do you feel represented in these programs? Like, what's the impact that the political, like, these programs going to have on you as young people living in Saint-Just, living in other municipalities around Brussels? And we also have also in local initiatives like Dynamo. We have Dynamo, which is like the cousin of Dynamo International. Also, we have, like, young people come together. They do so many activities around Brussels. Some activities like in terms of art. We see we have also some what we call maison de quartier in French, and it's how can I explain it? It's like it's this house that is being that's there for the young people to come in, and especially they do music. We see so many young people doing music, like rap or other kind of music, but this kind of music, it's their way of expressing themselves. It's their way of expressing their struggles, what's going on in their own lives, talking about police brutality, talking about, how they don't feel represented, the poverty in their families, people who have no papers in Belgium. And you see these young people taking up these kind of issues and expressing them in their own languages, if I'm to say. And this is a beautiful thing to see how we are coming up and trying to say, okay, this is our time, because we see the danger around. Because if we don't do it, we are seeing like maybe in the next year. So I don't wish it, but the extreme right parties can win. And also we're like, okay, so we have to come and try to do something on the local community. And it's it's bearing fruits. And so yeah, so we see here where I live, it's an association where young people created, and we actually bought a house because we were seeing how the area is being gentrified, because we see, as I say, like 5 minutes from here, from this poorest municipality, we have European Union, and they are actually buying all the buildings, building this richest this for them. And that's how we are doing it in this area. We are just young people coming together, creating associations. We're like, if you don't let's buy this house and live in a community, because if you don't do this, like, they're gonna buy all the neighborhood, and just I don't know where we're gonna live after this. And this is really interesting projects young people are carrying out that have to be talked about and hopefully being supported by the political politics and other interesting people around Belgium and Europe. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. It's inspiring, and I want to say that hopefully participation and political participation in politics doesn't end or doesn't start, neither ends with elections. So there's life after election, hopefully. And now since there are not questions from the chat, I will leave to any of you who has any comments or reaction or questions for the other speakers. So I leave it for a couple of seconds. Otherwise, we could take several directions, and I have several questions for all of you, but I'm leaving the floor to you for reactions of comment or questions to the other presentations.
Yeah, maybe what I want to comment on is where I feel that we lack is, I mean, this is my position from being a young person not so long ago, working with young people for last 12, 13 years. So I was on both sides, you know, working with the young people, still being a young person. I feel like that we have built small communities and support systems where young people feel heard, welcome, accepted. And I think I really strongly believe that this is the answer. I mean, in the society where individualism, consumerism is, you know, in every sphere of our lives, I think being part of the community is like one of the ways to kind of survive and live this life meaningfully, let's say. And I think youth work, when it is really implementing its potential, can be one of the communities for young people. We tend to call ourselves, our organization, a community. So this part, I think we have good practices. And where I feel that we are lacking is we get all this information, we get all these suggestions. We found ways to express the voices of young people, but you know, we don't have a union, or we don't have a strong apparatus that will kind of put pressure or lobby or whatever you call it to the ones that have the power to really implement these changes into the reality. I mean, when we look at the voting apparatus, I mean, and again, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but young people are relatively not interesting for politicians. You have I mean, I guess it's for all of our countries that the age where you can vote is 18. Yeah, is it?
Actually, some of the countries, including Belgium, are opened for this kind of election, for the next elections, the possibility to vote from 16 years old. Yes.
So, for example, in Slovenia, the reality is that you have a part of the population aged 15 to 18 that is involved in the labor market. You know, so they are in a way working and almost living like adults, yet they don't have the right to vote. So you have the part of the population who is kind of not interesting because they don't have the right to vote. And then you have the part of the population. So at least in Slovenia, this part 18 to 30 years old, that the voting statistics are relatively low. So the politicians don't have the interest to buy the votes, you know, to place the important issues when it comes to young people into their political programs, you know. So here for me, the question is, who is taking the responsibility? Or maybe do you have in your local national realities some kind of institution, a union, whatever, an institution that it's, you know, taking this role of putting the pressure to the ones that are in the position of power, that they would really consider the issue of young people and make change in favor, or like really involving young people into the decision making.
Does someone want to pile on or answer or give a
Actually, not to answer exactly, of course, but it was some very good points highlighted here. The first one was, for instance, how much important is also when because as you said, we have some different kind of activities, we create specific initiatives, but how important is to be committed on that. And I think that not a solution, a way to do so is to have this kind of advisory groups in the organization and to follow up with them so as not to be separately some advocacy initiatives, but to form this kind of group that will work next to you and together, and to have specific goals and aims that the group will decide, of course. And the other about, because you were saying before, about the elections and that young people sometimes are not actively involved in that, to realize the importance of education in order to form active citizens, because for instance, here in Greece, from the age of 17 you can vote. But indeed, the majority of the young people do not go to vote. They're not interested in that. So it is a very big discussion, an open discussion about how we can create active citizens. And I think the best way should be the education.
I would like just to follow up on your on your how can we create active citizens? Of course, education, but I will start from listening to them, because I feel that, and we can talk about a lot of about educational system, both formal and non-formal, and as part of a network of street social worker, we are strongly advocating to recognizing the power and the value of non-formal education. And yes, I mean, thank you, Neshka, because you talked about, you were talking about the age of voting, and then also Iris was talking about active citizenship. And I think I have a lot of thoughts in my mind and I'm trying to organize them. But first, I think in the European Union, we have a huge issue about citizenship, because and I think that citizenship is like it's so closely linked with participation that if we are creating classes of citizens or non-citizens, how can we expect to have to build inclusive societies and genuinely democratic societies? And then there's the whole other issues about young people, but not only young people, who are citizens, who have the rights and the legal status, let's say, to vote and to participate, and still they don't do it. And is highlighted also in the polls they took when they developed the European Union youth goals about really one of the first obstacles to participation is access to information. Because for example, in Belgium, there's the debate on, we are letting teenagers, 16 to 18 years old, they have the possibility to vote. Okay. I'm quite sure that the majority of them, they don't even know, because there wasn't a proper communication on this new right, let's say, to vote for a new part of the population. And then, even if they know they can, are they interested? Are they? And I think that there was in all of the presentation, like this kind of yes, what's in for me? I mean, to vote, who's representing me? And so I think we have a lot of work, not only to give the proper information, but also to really listen to what they have to say, and there's maybe not so granting their right to vote. I mean, it's a possibility, but it could be an empty an empty box, literally, if you're talking about vote. And yes, I would like to go back to Nick on this, because you maybe don't know, but among all the things, Nick is also participating in a project with us as a change maker. That's how they call him. Is a project financed by the European Parliament for boosting youth participation to the next European elections. So, Nick, what can you say to us about your perspective on this kind of, I mean, the project in itself, but I mean, also the logic of this kind of.
To me, I've been listening about the challenges that we face, in Belgium, in Greece, and Slovenia, and I've been seeing so many similarities, about the challenges, the issues the youth is, they're facing, and for me, I think it's quite important to have this discussion, because we're talking about the European Parliament, because being part of this project is to know how can we push young people around Europe, like especially European countries, like European Union countries, go and vote and feel like they're legitimate. And for me, one of the solutions that comes in my mind, after listening to all presentations, is how can we create community? But someone who is a young person, like if I'm to be part of it, like a young person here in Belgium, like me, to know that there are also other young people in Slovenia, in Greece, in other countries that are facing the same issues. How can we come together? Like, yes, it's really important to work on the local community, but is it possible to also go out and work with other youth people, in Greece, in Slovenia, in Portugal, in Spain, and around Europe? And because when we were at the European Parliament, they're always telling us like, we are one family as European Union. So how can we create like a one family as young people facing these kind of issues, and so that we can be more strong and go to vote, knowing that you are voting for our own rights. We are voting for these issues to be tackled upon. Because we're talking about here in Belgium, it's actually an obligation for people to go and vote, for the young people, and everyone, like, we have to go to vote. This is like an obligation, it's in the Constitution, and so, but young people, they go to vote, but they don't know what to vote for. They don't know, like, okay, so I'm voting because if I don't vote, there are some maybe like punishments, like, I may be punished. But what am I voting for? Like, what are the political programs that we have? Like, when they are talking about European elections, when we're talking about like what's going on, like, are they really talking about our issues? Like, or it's just how they like to so superficial, like just talking about youth rights and all, but what's being acted upon in our communities, and actually working together, telling someone who is a young person here in Belgium facing so many issues, so many barriers, like, you are not alone. There are also other young people around Europe who are facing the same issues, and there is a way of working together to so that our voice can be heard at the the top, at the European the European level.
I think I'd said at the beginning that 1 hour and a half on this topic, it's like a tiny time, but we are slowly approaching quickly approaching the end. But yes, I don't know. Yes, I'm going back to something that Neshka touched upon, but linked with also the question of communities and small or bigger communities, and it's the question of we are living in a society which is hyper individualized, and maybe more and more, and yet we recognize that for our peaceful living we need participation. but sometimes we feel that it's the same system, the same institution who are pushing these two, at least in their words. I mean, the individualization part, maybe also with actions, but how can, I mean, can the two live together? Or maybe we could reflect on some changes about also the individualization part and the consumerism and the consumistic society, and or if they could live together, how can we manage them to live together? Because I think that we are observing that a wealthy society, it's not, I mean, an economic wealthy society, it's not always a society when everybody participates in, and the participation and wealth are not, that do not go necessarily together. And yeah, that will be like maybe my last thought on it. And I will leave the floor again to the speakers to give maybe a last reaction on one of the points we touched upon, knowing that this is a first step of a journey we're taking together with Dynamo International, DCI, and Tejiendo Redes. And of course, we will continue to work on these very interesting topics.
I can start with my final words. I will maybe answer the part that you were, or I understood it, because maybe I wanted to understood it in that way. If and how, let's say, consumerism and individualism can work together with communities and participation. And I think, and this is like maybe more my activist part of me, is that, yeah, for sure, we can kind of put the blisters, the patches on, you know, and continue as it is for some time. But I think for like real meaningful participation, for really a well-being of all, not only few, I think like this is the system, the economical system, society will have to change. It is simple as that. I mean, all the researchers are showing that the communities, it's not important how much the community has in general, but what is the gap between the poorest and the richest is the one that is really affecting the well-being of people. So we live in highly segregated world. You were, you know, as briefly as well, kind of mentioning the citizen part of the issue. So we are segregated as we can be. European Union is closed. We are talking about, or we're talking about for a few months, war in Ukraine, because it was really near to us. I mean, there are many wars around the world that at least Slovenian media is not covering, you know. So in a way, we as a society, I think we'll have to change. And when we will change in a way that we will go more into the direction of participation, communities, distribution of wealth would be more equal, then I think we will be really able to talk about well-being of all. So in a way, I think we can survive a little longer with the system as it is. But I think on long run, I think like for all of us working in the youth, social, whatever sector we call it, I think that we are aware and that we are really in touch with the population that, you know, is at the end really marginalized and does not have the access to wealth or to the power or participation. So yeah.
Yeah, so I will go with how like it's really important to have this kind of discussions about participation, and can talk about participation, voting, and how can we participate. And for me, what I learned, and I know what I'm learning, is always centralize the the constant community that we're talking about, so that we just, and when we were to talk about participation, like who other people are we talking about, like in which kind of system. And so I always thought, when you are discussing in a community, in associations with other young people, I'm like, okay, maybe the system was not designed for people who are like us, like young people from migration background, or young people who are poor, who don't come from this rich families and all. But I think we still have an opportunity to do things in our own way. I mean, we have to, like, as I always tell people, like we have to own our own narratives, working together, coming together and as a community, not being so, because we're talking about individualism, like I always tell people, like, maybe individuals more, want, help us, as a community. Maybe we're just one person to to reach somewhere. But if we want to work as a community, we need to come together with our own differences. Because as I said, that I work with the queer community, and there also other sub communities in our big community as young people, is how to come together with our own differences for the one common goal. And so I hope these kind of discussions will continue and try to work together, and and it's really nice to feel like other young people from from Greece, from Slovenia, from other countries, a part of Belgium, are also facing these kind of issues, come together and and discuss and see how can we work together. Thank you.
Yeah, this is very important, as you said, how we really, initiatives like that, even this panel discussion, open discussion, where we have the opportunity to exchange best practices, opinions, or ideas, are really important, because it's such a, we could discuss for hours about participation and how we can guarantee youth participation. But sometimes if you focus, if each of us, and every organization, for example, every youth worker, every lawyer, every social worker, every professional tries to put, to have maybe a small goal in the beginning, but if we work in this kind of direction, maybe step by step, we will manage to have some more big impact. So I think we need to start from ourselves, first of all, and then with the work we are doing to participate in this kind of actions, to try to cooperate with other organizations, with the communities, to try to be inclusive. And I think let's be optimistic that at some point this gap will be narrowed down.
Thank you very much, Iris, and also to Nick and Nishka. And I'm just summing up some of your highlights, and just starting from this, that on one hand, I strongly agree that in order to ensure participation, we have to maybe think of rethink all the spheres of society. I mean, it really englobes all the spheres, and so it's if we looked from that perspective, it could be depressing and it could be frustrating and so on. But at the same time, as it is pointed, it starts. I mean, everyone could really and have a practical impact on it, even if it's very tiny. So I would like to leave you with this maybe both pessimistic and optimistic thought, and also to repeat. I liked very much the sentence from Nick to the importance of create your own narrative, because sometimes, especially if you're perceived or portrayed as someone who has not the legitimacy, or yes, who is not considered as part of society, community, nation, or wherever, you still have the possibility, you still can claim the possibility to create your own narrative. And of course, we as professionals are here, we have our part to play in this game. So thank you again. Again, this was not a marathon, it was a 100-meter sprint, so it went away in a couple of seconds, but I'm sure it's only a start of a long and beautiful journey with the partners from both Tejiendo Redes and DCI, and also other people who are friends and colleagues and allies that we are encountering on the streets and on this journey. So thank you very much. We're going to keep in contact, and this webinar has been recorded, so hopefully there's more than the people who just attended live that could listen to the words that we spoke. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.